So did Rick Albin tell any good jokes before the last one started, or are we failing in that regard? I have dad jokes, but I guess I'll save them for another time.
He was boring too.
Thanks, Lynn.
I was the one making everybody laugh. It's true. Very true.
All right, Rick, I'm going to start it.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Baker, and I have the honor of serving as the President and CEO of your Grand Rapids Chamber. On behalf of the Grand Rapids Chamber, welcome to the 2020 3rd District Congressional Debate. Today's debate is live streamed by WZZM and will touch on several top issues for the West Michigan business community. We are looking forward to this event and hope you walk away with a better understanding of the candidates and their policy priorities before the primary election on August 4th. With that brief introduction, please welcome Andy Johnston, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Grand Rapids Chamber.
Thank you, Rick, and good afternoon. It's my pleasure to moderate this debate among the 5 candidates running in the Republican primary for the 3rd Congressional District. As a reminder, the district is made up of Calhoun, Kent, Berry, Ionia, and a small portion of Montcalm counties. The seat is currently held by Congressman Justin Amash. First elected in 2010, Congressman Amash is no longer a member of the Republican Party and is not seeking re-election to his seat. Hillary Scholten is the lone Democratic candidate and will be her party's nominee in November. The Chamber will be providing an opportunity to hear from Ms. Scholten soon. The 5 Republican candidates with us today are, in alphabetical order, Lynn Affendulis, Joe Farrington, Peter Meyer, Tom Norton, and Emily Raffi. Let me go over a few ground rules before we begin. All participants are muted to ensure the best audio quality for our candidates and as they answer our questions. Candidates will each have 2 minutes for their opening statements and 2 minutes for a closing statement and 1 minute to respond to 6 questions. 5 questions about West Michigan business priorities have been given to candidates in advance, and 1 will come from the audience. Candidates, you will be able to see a timer, and if you go over your time, we will use the mute button on you. We don't want to, but we will if needed. Attendees, please utilize the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to submit your question for the candidates. Please be sure to word your question in a general way that all candidates can respond to. Otherwise, questions directed at only one candidate will not be asked. Our government affairs staff at the Chamber will be screening questions as they come in to sort out duplicate questions, assure topics of greatest interest are asked, and put personal questions aside. Also, questions that are inappropriate for the branch of government involved in this debate will be set aside. For example, a question about city tax rates would not be appropriate for a congressional candidate discussion. Candidates are featured on your screen with their name under their picture. They have drawn a number to determine their order for opening statements. That order is reversed for closing statements. Candidates will then answer questions in a random order to ensure that the same person doesn't follow the same person each time. So let's get started with the opening statements. The candidate drawing the number 1 card is Peter Meyer, and following Peter, we'll have Joe Farrington. Peter, please kick us off with your opening statement.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rick. And thanks to the Grand Rapids Chamber and WZZM 13 for broadcasting this, and to all our fellow primary challengers in this race right now for gathering. My name is Peter Meyer, and I'm a Republican running for Congress here in the 3rd Congressional District. I was born and raised in West Michigan. My grandfather was Fred Meyer, and I spent my summers growing up working in our family's stores before leaving West Michigan to join the military. I served with the Army in Iraq, and later I was a conflict analyst in Afghanistan. But throughout, I've been a strong veteran advocate, campaigning for the post 9/11 GI Bill, running to make sure that our veterans, the men and women who served in our military, are taken care of when they've come back home. And I've even testified before Congress to ensure that veterans' benefits stay as strong and as stable as necessary. Today, I'm running for Congress and asking to earn your vote so we can bring back a sense of strong, stable, and effective representation to West Michigan. I look up to Jerry Ford, Paul Henry, Vern Ehlers, folks who have served in this seat before and have made sure that West Michigan's voice is being heard, that our policy priorities are being met, and that we once again have a government that's working, for us and that we are a strong part of. We can't afford to be kind of outside, outside the room trying to knock in. We need to have a seat at the table. We need somebody who will work together strongly with President Trump, who will work and be able to extend a hand across the aisle to advance our policy priorities, but most of all will support our conservative values like limited government, economic freedom, and individual liberty, because those are the foundation that all of the strongest components, all of the things that are working so well in this country are built on that foundation. And we can use that same foundation to find solutions for the problems that are facing us today and the problems down the road. So with that, I look forward to a spirited debate and hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, Peter. Joe Farrington.
Hello, West Michigan. I'm Joe Farrington. I'm a fiscal conservative, a social moderate, just the same as John McCain, President Ford, President Eisenhower. Reagan and Bush ideas are now liberal ideas by today's politics. Those Republicans I just mentioned, they were all gentlemen, statesmen. They had diplomacy and the best interest of this nation. I do not prescribe to divisive rhetoric or language. We're talking about our countrymen. We are all Americans. We all love this country. I'm running up against 4 Republican candidates, conservative, hyper-conservative candidates that lack the spine, lack the backbone to hold the president accountable for his words and also his actions. They back President Trump 100% no matter what he does or what he says. Now, I'm a school teacher and also a bar owner. That being said, I do not reward bad behavior. The most unpatriotic, un-American ideology is partisan politics. When those other candidates put party politics above the needs of the nation, they do a disservice to this nation. We all have a common goal: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I like the idea of ending wars. However, never in this nation's history had we had a president that is so eager to cozy up to dictators such as Kim Jong-il, Maduro, Bolsonaro, Xi, Putin, Assad, and Erdogan. I mean, those 3 right there are presidents allowing the slaughter of Kurdish forces, which our military depends on for key intelligence in the Middle East. Additionally, it's easy to stop wars when your president is greenlighting bounties on American troops. And he betrays our allies, he betrays our troops, betrays American health and human services, and I'm not for that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Emily Raffi, your opening statement.
Thank you for inviting us to participate in this debate. My name is Emily Raffi. I am a business transaction attorney. I was born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan. My father is a cancer doctor who has treated cancer patients for 46 years in Southwest Michigan. My mother was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I have a son. He's a teenager. He is an honor roll student. I'm very proud of him. I raised him independently as a single mother. His father, my husband, passed away tragically in a car accident in 2008. That's given me a great deal of compassion that I would hope to bring to this position if I'm elected, as well as a very sincere value of life and understanding of the fragility of life. Professionally, I'm a business transaction attorney. I have represented lenders, all different types of businesses, especially in small business lending. I have 20 years of experience in federal law. I have a strong understanding and grasp of constitutional law and will uphold our individual liberties if I'm elected. I'm also the only candidate in this election who has both agreed to term limits and has set forth a clear voter contract of goals I wish to attain if I am elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next up is Tom Norton.
Yeah, I believe I'm unmuted. My name is Tom Norton. I filed to run for Congress because Justin Amash was failing this district. I was tired of having representation that would tell our veterans, "You're not my problem, go to the VA." I've said this many times before. And we started running against him, and then he tweeted to impeach the president of the United States, and then every candidate stepped forward and decided they had the courage to run. It tells me that they're in it to serve themselves because they saw the opportunity to do it. I filed because I want our constituents to have somebody who has the experience of everyone. I was the only one raised on a farm. I'm the only one that's actually built buildings. I've worked on transmissions and motors, worked in a factory. I've went to college and worked my way through college. I served in the United States Army. I was combat infantry, and I'm endorsed by Combat Veterans for Congress. Out of all the candidates here, I have the experience of everybody who lives in this district. I've owned a business and sold it. I've worked my way up because government was not in my way, and my family taught the hard work and perseverance to actually move forward. That's what we need to actually take to Washington. Somebody who has the experience of everyone who lives in the district, that understands what it takes to become successful in this society, that is going to work tirelessly to make sure that everybody's taken care of. I can tell you one of the biggest difference between myself and anybody else running for Congress. If my employees fail at constituent relations, they better sit there and find a new job because they're going to have the pad off their resume. I'm not going to sit there and take all of these bribes that they have in DC, because if you go to DC and land, what you're going to see is you're going to see billions of dollars in government waste. And that's not the government's money. That's our money. That's tax dollars. That's government theft from my grandparents, from me, from your children, from our future. I am running because it is time that we have somebody that fights for America and fights for everybody who lives in this district. We aren't going to serve one. We need to make sure that if we have differences of opinion, that we are going to serve everyone.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Lynn Affendulis.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lynn Affendulis. I am a lifelong West Michigan resident. I'm a mom. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I am the daughter of a small businessman and a teacher, and the granddaughter of immigrants who came here to this country for security and for opportunity. And they worked hard. They built their businesses and their modest lives. They built their homes and their churches, and they sent their sons to war. And the only things they handed me were the most important things in the world, which were faith and family. And their legacy, I believe, is my conservative outlook on life. I have worked hard for our community all my adult life. I have served in many initiatives and boards. I served on Grand Rapids Youth Commonwealth, which currently is the Boys and Girls Club, Student Advancement Foundation, which I also had the opportunity to chair, Chamber of Commerce, my church board. I love engaging in community. I love being part of the solution. I love service so much that I ran for office for the first time in 2018, and I am a first-time legislator. Before that, I had a strong 40-year career in the private sector, and I'm going to Washington, not because I need a career. I've had a good career. I'm going there so that I can use everything that I have learned in my career and in my community leadership for the benefit of the people of the 3rd District. And whatever I've learned and whatever skills I've gained, I want to put to work for the people of the 3rd. I believe in term limits, so I just want to go there for 3 terms and then hand over the reins of the legislature or of representation to somebody else. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity. I mean, I'm grateful to be able to run. I know it's only because of the people who came before me and those who fought for our country, and I think of them all the time, and I'm grateful to them as well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, and that concludes the opening statements from our 5 candidates. Again, the election is 2 weeks away. So we're going to have the first question be, what are your top 3 policy priorities? And we will be doing the first set of questions in alphabetical order. So Lynn Affendulis, you're up first. What are your top 3 policy priorities?
Sorry about that. COVID has changed a lot. I mean, COVID has exacerbated problems that we've already had, and it is our response to COVID is a very expensive proposition. And so I want to work with the president to make sure that the post-COVID economy is strong. And also I will work with him to make the tough decisions about what the government can and can't do. We're going to have to take a look at what that costs and what we have to cut. My father had a restaurant in downtown Grand Rapids in the 1960s, and the 1969 race riots essentially destroyed it. So I want to work on bringing law and order to our communities. It took us decades to get downtown Grand Rapids back, and that's not going to happen again. We need to work on China. We need to see it for the threat that it is to business and to commerce and to security. And I'll work with the president to bring manufacturing back here and to decrease our reliance on China.
Thank you, Lynn. Next up is Joe Farrington.
Yes, 3 bills. First, accountability and privatization bill, which would wrangle in excessive greed and hold corporations accountable to public interest rather than shareholders. This bill limits a salary of corporate executives to no more than 100 times greater than the lowest paid employee. Furthermore, executives, managers, and employee bonuses may not exceed $10 million annually for any employee. The second bill would be the goose gander bill, which would be what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It obligates members of both the House and the Senate to the same health insurance available to the poorest, most impoverished Americans there is. Affordable Health Care Act, Medicare, Medicaid, emergency room care, GoFundMe care, that's a real thing. This is the only way that we're going to get health care fixed, period. And the third one would be Ready for War bill, which time is up.
Thank you, Joe, for respecting the timer. Peter Meyer, your top 3 policy priorities.
Thank you, Andy. As others have said, one of the biggest issues and challenges that we're facing right now is that every challenge we had before the coronavirus hit is still going to be a challenge after. So our number one priority has to be supporting our small businesses and reopening our economy, as we are safely balancing the needs of operating within a pandemic. And that flows into my policy priority number 2, which is decreasing the cost of healthcare. It's completely unacceptable that we have Americans who are bankrupted by their healthcare costs. We need to find solutions there. And that is something that we must protect pre-existing conditions while at the same time ensuring that we are getting what we're paying for in our healthcare system. And number 3, this is something that's deeply personal to me. I've spent 3 years between Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been a combatant, I've been a non-combatant. We need to end our endless wars overseas and at the same time rebalance our national defense so that we're focused on the challenge that China is posing, not only through pandemic propagation, but also through their intellectual property theft and other expansion in the Asia region. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Tom Norton, your top 3 policy priorities.
My main priorities is number 1, pro-life legislation. Roe versus Wade did not legalize abortion, but it said that Congress needed to define where life began. And our representatives always say they're going to go there and do something, and they do nothing. Number 2 is immigration reform. We need to protect American jobs and Americans first. The other one is actual budget reform. Again, we have trillions of dollars in government waste going on. We need to make sure we rein that in, make sure that we're taking care of the average American so we can actually get the government out of their way so that every kid, when they grow up, have the ability to open their own businesses and become successful.
Thank you, Tom. Emily Rafi, your top 3 policy priorities.
My first priority is always to protect the Constitution and our individual liberties. If we do not protect the intangible rights that we have, there is no economy to protect. My second priority is to rebuild and the economy with new job opportunities and new small business opportunities. So for 15 years, I worked in small business lending. I've looked at the economy in many different phases, starting in 2008 when the economy was in shambles, all the way through more recently where we made a full recovery and beyond. So I've seen the economy through thick and thin. I know what to do to help boost the economy, to use the programs that are in place, to revitalize our economy as we need. Third is healthcare reform. Lowering the cost of healthcare using competitive measures is one of my top 3 priorities.
Thank you, Emily. That concludes our first question. The second question touches on an issue a few of you touched on in the last question, and that's as we recover from COVID-19 as a nation or still deal with it, what policies will you support at the federal level to boost Michigan's economic recovery? A timely issue as Congress is back in session this week, discussing what other specific policies might be needed to support the economic recovery going forward. Joe Farrington, you are starting off this line of questions. So what would be done at the federal level to help the economy recover, deal with COVID-19? Joe, please unmute yourself, Joe. Sorry.
All right, unmute.
Thank you.
All right, to find a solution, we need to figure out the problem. First, we need to start assuming that there may never be a vaccine for COVID-19. Secondly, there is a magic bullet to defeating this virus. It's very simple. It is wear a mask, social distance. Nobody is taking away your freedom when you're being asked to protect not only yourself, but the other people around you. This is not a conspiracy theory. The media is not trying to control you. Third, do not live beyond your means financially. Work, be safe, social distance, wear a mask, be patient. If we all comply with common sense, COVID-19 will be gone in a few years. That's worst case scenario. This is not a political issue. It's not Democratic. It's not Republican. It is a virus. It is a pandemic, and thousands are dying every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Lynn Affendulis, what policies would you support at the federal level to boost Michigan's economic recovery as we deal with COVID-19?
Thank you so much for the question. I spent the last number of months, like so many of you, working from home and taking, I took so many calls from constituents whose lives were uprooted and upended because of COVID. They've lost businesses and income, and it's been devastating. And I've been very disappointed in our governor's response. Frankly, I think it's been devastating. And at the federal level, I think that we have supported American workers, and we need to continue to do that. We need to make sure that COVID-related money goes to COVID-related expenses. This cannot be a bailout for states that have had irresponsible fiscal policy. So that's very important to me. And when we have unexpected expenses as a family, we sit down at the table and we figure out how are we going to take care of this emergency. What can we fund? What can't we fund? What are we going to have to put off for later? And that's exactly what we have to do at the federal level.
Thank you, Lynn. Emily Rafi, what policies would you support at the federal level as to support our economy as we deal with COVID-19?
So I would continue to support the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Act that's already been passed, as well as the Farmers to Families Act that was put into place that's helping farmers sell their produce so it doesn't go to waste. But beyond that, we need to look at how we're going to revitalize the economy. There are hundreds of thousands of businesses that have been forced to close because they weren't able to continue to generate revenue. So I think one thing that we could do at the federal level is create a special SBA program to bring the capital that's needed to those closed businesses so that they can reopen. We can make this, a COVID-friendly bill, if you will, that has special features in it that reduces interest rates or makes it easier to attain. And that's the way I would go into this is to try to get those closed businesses to reopen again, as well as supporting the current legislation that's been passed.
Thank you, Emily. Tom Norton, what federal policies would you support to help the economy as we deal with COVID?
What we need to do is actually create 0% interest loans to all business owners that were affected by COVID-19 and new businesses opening. If we do 0% interest loans and we do them for say 12 or 24 months, what we're going to have is that entrepreneurial spirit that's made America so great come forward and actually redevelop this economy. Business owners know what they're doing. We need to make sure it's a hand up and not a handout. We can't keep bailing out everybody. But by these reduced interest loans across the board for 0% and then take them up to 5.99 after that, we're going to make sure that these businesses can succeed and that jobs will come back. The other thing we need to do is make sure that our medical supplies are not being manufactured in China. We can't have it whatsoever. We have American businesses that supply PPE to people. We need to make sure that they're taken care of. We need to make sure that we have these things in place so we can work forward. But the only way they're going to do it is by inspiring and giving the American entrepreneur the ability to succeed in the United States.
Thank you, Tom. Peter Meyer, what can be done federally to support the economy as we deal with COVID?
Thank you, Andy. So I have a background in disaster response. I've served in disaster response missions on 3 continents. One of the things that we need in any time of crisis, especially from our federal government, is a degree of order and stability. Now, as some of the other folks have mentioned, we started to get that with the payroll protection plan and other initiatives so that we can make sure that our small businesses, especially, have that capital so they can continuously operate. But what we also need to do is make sure that as we've been peeling back some of the regulation that hamstrung the early parts of our relief effort, that we take note of that, because there's a lot of regulation that doesn't exist for public safety. It doesn't necessarily exist for the common good. It's there to protect incumbents. It's there to make it difficult for new entrants to come into certain fields. And we need to make sure that we harness and capture the entrepreneurial spirit of this country, because that's what's not only going to get us out of COVID, but it's going to lay the groundwork for our economic resurgence to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And our third question, we'll start with you as well.
Okay.
Immigration is an important component of Michigan's economy. Our most recent data shows that foreign-born residents in Kent County contributed $3.3 billion to the county's GDP. What is your stance on immigration reform? And again, we'll start with you, Peter.
Thank you. So my wife is an immigrant. I'm honored that this is actually the first presidential election she'll be voting in. My mother and father-in-law are immigrants as well. This is actually their first election period they'll be voting in. So immigration is a very deeply personal issue to me. Not only being the great-grandchild of immigrants on both sides of my family, but having seen how difficult it is to operate within our current immigration system. There's no question that our immigration system is broken, but we need to make sure that not only are we securing our southern border so that we can better control who's coming in, but that we make it so that the legal immigration system is prioritized around merit, it's prioritized around our economic imperatives as a state and as a nation, while at the same time ensuring that that sense of being able to capture that American dream, that upward social mobility that has made it possible for families like all those throughout West Michigan to achieve, that we maintain that. And that is not what our immigration system right now is prioritizing. And that is why it absolutely needs to be fixed.
Thank you, Peter. Emily Rafi, your stance on immigration reform.
Sure. So my father is an immigrant to this country. My mother was born here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And my father's story really is the quintessential American dream story. And I want to preserve that dream, those opportunities for generations to come. So the first thing that I believe in is strict border security. That goes without saying. The second thing is a merit-based immigration system, which we've had for decades. I think that should continue. I think that it's worthwhile and we should bring in the best and the brightest to our country first. Third, I've spoken with a lot of the agricultural businesses in our district, and they would very much like a controlled agricultural immigration program, specifically for agriculture, so that they can compete with the prices of agriculture goods coming from South America. And those goods from South America are also going to China. So if...
Thank you, Emily. Tom Norton, your stance on immigration reform.
My stance on immigration reform, we need to first actually make English a national language. The reason we need to do that is because our children that are immigrants have been exploited for far too long. The families have been exploited for far too long. By actually making English a national language, when we come in here, they're given the tools to succeed. That's what we need to do on step 1 of immigration reform. We then need to require the U.S. Constitution to be taught when they're coming in, American history to be taught to come in, a basic background check to make sure now we're not letting in criminals, and then come on in. We don't need a 7-year wait time. We need them to understand what it means to be an American. We need them to understand our culture and what the United States is about. We need to make sure the tools are there for everybody to have the ability to move upwards in our society. And we need to build a wall to make sure that the drugs aren't coming across from Colombia, Honduras, Ecuador, Panama. It's coming through there. The American drug problem is destabilizing Central America and causing our immigration problem. That is how we're going to be able to address it. And then visa programs for legal immigrants that come across to support farmers.
Thank you, Tom. Lynn Afendulis, your stance on immigration reform.
Thank you so much. As you can tell from the answers to some of these questions, we are a nation of immigrants. And that's one of the beauties of this nation. I'm the granddaughter of immigrants, and they came here. As I said, they just couldn't wait to become Americans and to fulfill the American dream. And all of that is, bears with me as I'm in office and as I go about my life. I think that we must make sure that we welcome immigrants to our shores. We need to be a welcoming nation. We always have been. We also need to provide safe harbor to those who actually need asylum. And then we need to protect our communities and our country from those who come here to do harm or to dismantle that which we've built since our founders. So, I heard somebody told me the other day that if you've got a leaky roof, you don't clean up the water first. You fix the roof, and then you clean up the mess. And so we need to fix that roof and make sure that our borders are secure, and then deal with all the policy issues.
Thank you, Lynn. Joe Farrington, your stance on immigration reform, please.
Gracias, mi amigo. All right, this is an issue that is over 40 years old. In the presidential primary of 1980, Reagan versus Bush, they both spoke in terms. Rather than talking about putting up a fence, we need to work out our problems mutually with our neighbors to the south and figure out a way to have migrant workers collect taxes and to open up borders both ways. Reagan and Bush would be considered liberals by today's standards and today's politics. I feel fine in their company. I do not understand how I don't understand how people whose spouses are immigrants, my spouse is an immigrant, or adopted children are immigrants. Other families may be immigrants or members or even neighbors from other countries, south of the border, whether it be Colombia, Guatemala, Mexico, wherever. It's just, we need to represent all of the community, and we need to be more welcoming.
Thank you, Joe. That concludes all of our responses to question 3. Question 4, we'll start with Tom Norton. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to light disparities in a number of areas, including healthcare. Do you have any federal policy ideas on how to approach dealing with healthcare disparities? Tom?
One of the things that we need to do, like I brought up earlier, is we need to make sure that we are manufacturing more of our medical resources here in the United States or by actual U.S. allies. China is not an ally. A matter of fact, my state representative, Ms. Afandoulis, I have some text messages of it, tried to buy PPE from Hong Kong, which is a part of China, which I find funny that you brought up China earlier. So we need to make sure that these things are manufactured here in the United States. We need to make sure that Americans are employed in manufacturing it to protect American lives. The other thing, that 42% of the deaths in nursing homes was because our governor put COVID-19 patients inside of those nursing homes. You should be prosecuted for manslaughter.
Thank you, Tom. Emily Rafi, again, COVID-19 has brought to light disparities in a number of areas, including healthcare. Any federal policy ideas on how we work to eliminate those healthcare disparities?
So healthcare reform is one of my priorities if I'm elected to Congress. The first thing we have to make sure we do is protect pre-existing conditions no matter what. Second, we need to make healthcare accessible to everyone. I approach it through a competitive model. I think opening up insurance to nationwide competition, reducing, capping the level of damages allowed to be given in medical malpractice suits is a huge component of why our medical costs are so high. We need to cap the damages that can be awarded in healthcare lawsuits. I agree with Tom with bringing back the healthcare equipment and prescription drug manufacturing to the United States. We should invest in preventative care equipment like CAT scans and MRIs. Japan has made them incredibly cheap. If you catch an illness or a cancer early, the long-term savings is exponential.
Thank you, Emily. Joe Farrington, policy ideas on how to eliminate healthcare disparities.
Yes, first of all, information is power. For the President of the United States to circumvent information from the CDC and to decide what information the CDC, as well as the public, receives, that should be criminal. Additionally, the President withholding federal aid to states whose governors are critical of the President, that is it's a petty childish action. And it only seeks to hurt Americans. Also, claiming it to be a hoax, not wearing a mask. This is a pandemic, and our lack of leadership is killing us. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, listen to me. We cannot continue this direction. We need to get up. We need to get these just enablers off the table. You need people that can hold the president accountable. I'm one of these people. The other four are not going to do it. This president's killing us.
Thank you, Joe. Peter Meyer, what can be done federally to try to eliminate healthcare disparities?
As I said in the beginning, just about every issue we had before coronavirus has been made far worse, and we're seeing that in healthcare disparities as well. When our campaign rerouted to delivering grocery care packages throughout West Michigan, some of the stories that were pouring in just absolutely broke your heart. The best thing we can do to increase access to healthcare is by really tackling some of the underlying cost drivers that are making it increasingly unaffordable even before COVID, and then are not allowing us to really break into those markets today. Focusing on price transparency, getting back to a place where market-based reforms are emphasizing a degree of healthy capitalist competition within our healthcare sector, so that folks are competing off of offering a higher quality product or decreasing price. Right now we have folks competing within that industry on government contracts, competing on owning a part of the system, and that's what's driving up our costs. Now, specifically with COVID, we also need to really increase our research and development budget at the National Institute of Health so that we can get an early warning for future pandemics and prevent the next COVID from occurring.
Thank you, Peter. Lynn Appendulis, what can be done federally to try to eliminate healthcare disparities?
Thank you so much. No matter what you think about it, we have the best healthcare system in the world. I will take it over any system anywhere. And that said, it's not perfect. There are things that, we need to fix. And pre-existing conditions is one important issue. If I have a daughter with a pre-existing condition, I have a pre-existing condition. We must make sure that people with pre-existing conditions have access. And we need to allow it to operate in a free marketplace, like others have said. This will help reduce costs. It will create competition. It will increase transparency and ultimately access. So I think those are two important things.
Thank you, Lynn. That completes our fourth question. Question 5, we'll start with Emily Raffi. Question 5 is, now perhaps more than ever, Michigan needs effective representation in Congress. Why will you be the most effective congressperson to represent the 3rd District, and how do you define effectiveness?
I define effectiveness as the ability to bring results. You are effective if you are able to curate results. So I believe that I'm the best candidate for the position because I have 20 years of federal law experience. None of my other opponents even know law, let alone federal law, let alone 20 years of federal law. I can hit the ground running. I know the history of legislation. I know what's been tried before, what didn't work, the current programs in place, how we can immediately go in and improve those programs if everyone agrees to it in Congress. So right off the bat, having that skill set, I think sets me apart. Secondly, I'm also a transaction attorney, which means I've negotiated tough deals for the entirety of my career. So I get between two parties, come up with a deal that both feel like they have won, and we get things done. That's a skill that we need now in Congress more than any other time that I can think of, overcoming the gridlock due to partisanship.
Thank you, Emily. Tom Norton, why will you be the most effective congressperson for the 3rd District, and how do you find effectiveness?
Again, effectiveness is really based upon the experience that you have in life. When you go into Washington or sales or anything, if you can't relate with the individual across from you, how can you possibly get anything done? It's not so much knowing every step of the way, but knowing how to build the relationship. Because when somebody starts negotiation, they tend to violate their principles, and then Americans always get kind of screwed, quite frankly. We need to make sure that they're not. We need to make sure that when we go there, we have somebody who has the same background as the majority of our district, from farming, from owning a small business, from serving in the military. We need to make sure that we have that so we can get the bills done that are going to be positive for this district, to make sure that everybody's represented, to make sure that nobody's left behind. Those types of relationships being built. Heck, at my last fundraiser, I had previous opponents coming there to help raise money that I'd ran against in the past. If you can't build a relationship with people that you fought with, how can you build a relationship with somebody in Washington you disagree with?
Thank you, Tom. Peter Meyer, why will you be the most effective person to represent West Michigan in Congress, and how do you define that effectiveness?
Starting with that last question first, defining effectiveness means not only being able to work strongly with folks on your own side of the aisle, but being able to identify those opportunities where you can find some bipartisan solutions. Our country is facing a lot of long-term challenges. We mentioned healthcare, but making sure that our Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security systems are protected and strengthened, that's going to require bipartisan reform. And if you don't have a member of Congress in office who can build those relationships and work across that aisle, then we're not going to find these solutions that are critical to protecting our seniors and making sure the most vulnerable are taken care of. I have a demonstrated bipartisan track record, especially working on veteran education issues. I've testified before Congress. I've helped pass major pieces of legislation. I know what it takes to get those constituents to the table, to get those stakeholders into the same room where we can all knock heads, figure out how best policy can come out, and then make sure it's shepherded through a complex process. And that's why I believe I can be the most effective representative for West Michigan going forward.
Thank you, Peter. Joe Farrington, why will you be the most effective person to represent West Michigan in Congress, and how do you define effectiveness?
All right, just dawned on me yesterday. I realized that I have more public experience as a village trustee than any other candidate that I'm running against. Twice the experience as Ms. Eppendulis, twice the experience of Mr. Norton after he was forced to resign. Mr. Meyer, his experience entails being born rich and also single-handedly winning the war on terror. Ms. Rafferty, she's an attorney, and we know we have plenty of those in Washington. We don't need another. I seek to represent all of the district. I seek to represent all of District 3 when I am in Congress, and I will commit to donating 25% of my congressional salary, as well as my personal income from my business, to West Michigan charities. In addition to that, as a school teacher, I know spoiled behavior. I know self-entitled behavior. As a bar owner, I know belligerence. Washington, here I come. I'm immune to your BS. I'm working class. I represent the working class. Let's do this.
Thank you, Joe. Lynn Appendulis, why will you be the most effective congressperson to represent us, and how do you define effectiveness?
Thank you, and I will start with that last first as well. I think effectiveness is doing what you say you're going to do, getting things done, and doing it with integrity. I believe I'll be the best congressperson of all these people because nobody in this debate knows this community like I do. Nobody has engaged in the way that I have engaged. Nobody has had as much business experience as I have, and now I've had the opportunity to dip my toes in the legislative waters. And I think that gives me an edge too. I have worked since I was 14 years old, and I know what it means to save and to budget. And I will treat taxpayer dollars just as if they were my own, and just as if I were sitting right here at the kitchen table making tough decisions about what we can and can't do with those dollars. I know and I live West Michigan values every day. And I engage in the communities that I represent. I believe I represent them and not me. And that's exactly what I'll do in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Lynn. And actually, our sixth question will start with you. And this one we are pulling from the audience before we go to closing statements. And the question is, it's something timely being debated in Congress. The question is, should the $600 federal pandemic unemployment assistance be extended? Again, the question is, should the $600 federal pandemic unemployment assistance be extended? Again, we're going to start that question with Lynn Appendulis. Lynn?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I believe that we must continue to help people who don't have employment, and we must especially continue to help our small businesses. There may be instances where we need to continue that, but frankly, it has been abused significantly. It worked. It helped us keep the economy afloat. It helped people in Michigan. But as this economy comes back, people have to start looking for jobs. People need to work. And I believe that this gives people an opportunity and an excuse not to. So I struggle with that. And I think if we do maintain it, we maintain it on a very limited basis.
Thank you, Lynn. Peter Meyer, same question. Should the $600 pandemic unemployment assistance be extended?
I'll give a quick and unequivocal no. I've talked to a number of small business owners who say that it's creating a really strong disincentive for folks returning to work, and that's putting them in even tougher positions to maintain their small businesses, which are the lifeblood of our community. Now, what I will say is what we should have done from the beginning on a lot of these issues, and where if we do need additional assistance for folks who otherwise would be applying for unemployment, is to offer some type of just direct cash payment, no means testing, none of the rigmarole, and none of the just incredibly convoluted processes that we've seen through the current initiatives. Just send those checks out. You know, if folks need that money, let's make sure that the money is available. But the more we put hurdles in their way, the more they're reliant on broken and antiquated unemployment systems like we've seen in our state and others with long backlogs, you know, the harder it is for our government to actually help our people. So we need to make sure that we're continuing to provide assistance, but this current mechanism is broken and creating a lot of negative outcomes.
Thank you, Peter. Joe Farrington, should the $600 federal pandemic unemployment assistance be extended?
Corporate welfare has always and is always so much more obscene than just public welfare. I don't agree that laws and regulations should exclusively benefit and protect corporations and the wealthy and special interests more than the public interest and just the working class. That being said, I think that with the $600 additional money that went out for unemployment, well, allows people to realize that that's $15 an hour. And that's pretty good money for regular working class people. You can actually pay some bills. And at some point, it is going to go away. As a matter of fact, it's supposed to be that at the end of this month. And I don't think that cripples the economy or cripples motivation to work. What I think it's going to do is inspire people to say, hey, how can I make that kind of money? That was pretty good. And they're going to better themselves.
Thank you, Joe. Emily Raffi, should the $600 federal unemployment assistance be extended?
I do not think it should be extended. I think that we've reached a point where people can go back to work. However, I'll put a caveat on that and say that if a certain state decides to shut down again, then I believe that assistance should be made available to the residents of that state. So, you know, we have to look at the situation on a state-by-state basis. I know that the COVID is more rampant in certain states than other states, so there's not a uniformity necessarily across the United States in terms of economic vitality. So my general answer is no. However, I would say that if a state goes back into lockdown, then that benefit should be made available once again to the citizens of that state.
Thank you, Emily. Tom Norton, on the $600 federal unemployment assistance benefit.
The federal unemployment should be stopped. I know a lot of folks that actually just took advantage of it because they didn't have to work. As I've said before, I was raised on a farm and I've actually worked my way up through society. When you're working your way up, you get to know and keep friends from every background. And when you have friends from every background, you get to see the actual impact. I know a lot of small business owners that can't get anybody to work. Where I work at, we're having a hard time getting employees to work, and we actually pay more than the unemployment. So it is motivating people to actually take, well, a long vacation. Now, on August 1st, a lot of them are planning on going back to work, which is going to make the unemployment just plummet because there is a lot of jobs out there that we can't fill right now. Restaurants are having a hard time. A lot of places are having a hard time getting employees to work from. This experiment in socialism has actually shown us exactly why we need to make sure folks are working, because we can't afford to pay this type of money out constantly. Otherwise, we're going to go completely broke and we're going to have serious hyperinflation.
Thank you, Tom. That concludes our general questions. We are now going to move to closing statements. The order has been reversed from the opening statements. So starting with the 2-minute closing statement will be Lynn Affendulis. Lynn?
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. Again, I'm a mom. I'm a hard worker. I was in business for a long time. I know and love this community. I've engaged in it all my adult life to make it a better place just for having lived here. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I love our Constitution. I will defend that to the death. I saw I remember what it was like to have a very engaged representative. I remember Vern Ehlers. In fact, he was always at events and at openings and community events. And I remember one time we had an event early in the morning, and Vern drove up in his, I think it was like a Honda Civic or something like that, and he pumped nickels into the meter just to make sure that he didn't put too much money in. He was so careful with taxpayer dollars, and he was so dedicated to the community. That's what I want to bring back to this. I also, frankly, look forward to going toe-to-toe with the AOCs of the world. I am so tired of people like her who complain about our country, who want to dismantle our country and all that it's good and all that it stands for. I believe that that's one of the reasons this president is popular, because he talks about the beauty of America and the strength of America and what we can be and what we can do. And that is one of his, the attractive features of this man. And that's how he goes about his business. But these people who want to dismantle everything that we've defended and fought for since our founding need to be addressed, and they need to be met head on, because they're going down an ugly path. And I don't want us to go down that path. I'm so grateful for the America that my grandparents and my parents left me, and it's exactly the America that I want to leave my children. So we'll be fighting for the fabric of this country. I'll be working hard to do that, and I would be so honored to earn your vote.
Thank you, Lynn. Tom Norton.
I'm Tom Norton. I am asking for your vote. I've already said I was the first one filed, and I told you why. I was raised on a farm, and I've worked fields, and I've actually worked my way up through society. But this election isn't so much about that as it is about the United States. We are in a war of Americanism versus socialism. The United States is under assault by Antifa, by this far-left socialism across the entire country, Alexandria Cortez, a presidential candidate on the Democratic side that looks like he may be suffering from dementia. That is what we are actually under assault of. A media that likes to manipulate the general populace. That is what is under assault in the United States. If we don't stand up and actually fight for her, we will not have a future for our children. We need to make sure that the United States can have patriots with bravery stand up and actually fight for it. We need to make sure that America can be the strongest nation on the planet for the next century again. This nation did not become what it is because of weak people. It became the nation it is because of strong people and good men that were willing to do bad things to our enemies. The United States has to rise above that. We need real Social Security reform, that when our family members die early, that 50% of their money goes within a family account to make sure that the families are taken care of, not for the government to steal it from us and take it away. That's the type of things we need to take to Washington. Real reforms where Americans are taken care of at the lowest level possible, that the waitress actually has the ability to rise up, that the small kid and the small immigrant coming in can learn English and open a business and have the American dream. It's not a house. It's not a car. It's the ability for freedom. That's why people came here, so that they could propel themselves further than what their heritage gave them. This isn't a nation of kings and queens and families with last names and entitlement. It's a nation where everybody can go with their own perseverance. Your vote isn't for sale. Stand up and fight.
Thank you, Tom. Emily Raffi, your closing statement.
Thank you for inviting us today. I appreciate the opportunity to let the voters compare our platforms. If I'm elected to Congress, I will uphold our Constitution and individual liberties. I'll use my background with 20 years of experience in federal law to repeal and create laws that will improve our economy, create jobs, build and improve on what President Trump has already done for our economy. I will work hard to control spending. I have a few different ways I've thought about different ways we could do this by creating new job opportunities through the SBA lending program. I appreciate all the support I've received over the span of this election, and if elected, I will work my hardest to reach the goals set forth in my voter contract. I'm also pledged and will maintain the term limit I have agreed to maintain. And I appreciate all the support I've received. please vote for me on August 4th. And I look forward for an opportunity to show the public what can be done, bringing in great negotiation skills to Congress, because I think everyone knows that the biggest problem in Congress is gridlock. And it would be a great relief to have someone in Congress that can get beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Joe Farrington, your closing statement.
In 2016 presidential primary, Donald Trump was not the 3rd District's first choice. He was our 3rd. The Republican voters of this district are too pragmatic, too sensible, too smart to simply play along. As for the general election, we all like the idea of voted for the idea of not having a career politician, putting an end to corruption, draining the swamp. Those are great ideas. And however, Trump is not that guy. He's a liar, he's corrupt, he's a bully, he's a con man. He continually seeks foreign interference in campaigns, even this year, to this day. These are facts. If you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, and if you want to know for a fact that your congressional representative is going to uphold and hold leadership accountable and represent the needs and concerns of this district, vote the Republican primary ticket, even if I'm the only person on the ballot that you're going to vote for. We, the 3rd District, we need to be able to sleep at night, knowing that we're finished with Donald Trump. He's a reality TV show host, and that's pretty much all he's really done successfully in his life. As for myself, I'm not putting a lot of money into this campaign. And we can prove to big interest, special interest, big corporations that you don't need money to represent a district. You don't need billions or, well, millions of dollars. I'm being outraised by 1,000, 10,000 times what I have into my campaign. We can beat big money. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Peter Meyer, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you to everyone tuning in. I know I get a hit a lot on my last name. I'm proud of the business that my family's created. I'm proud of the livelihoods that we've created throughout West Michigan. I'm proud of the services that we provide to folks throughout Michigan and the Midwest. But I'm not running on my last name. Words don't hurt me. I've had a lot of terrible things said about me, especially when I was an interrogator in Iraq. Most of those insults were in Arabic. I understood the majority of them. But they just wash right off my back. What I'm actually running on, is my record of bipartisan legislation getting passed. It's the 3 years I spent between Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's my strong desire that we find and strike the right balance for our federal government. We need effective representation, but we also need the discipline to recognize that not every problem has a federal solution. And in fact, the solutions that are going to be the most long lasting, that are going to be the most responsive to the needs of the community, and that are ultimately going to work, are going to be those that are found closest to the people. I believe that we need to have a strong representative. We need to have an effective representative. We need someone who's going to take our conservative values to Washington, but also somebody who looks and says, how can I strengthen our local communities? How can I strengthen our state so that the governments that are operating closest to the people have the tools that they need, are equipped, not a federal government that's going to impose one-size-fits-all mandates, not a federal government that's going to ask folks at a lower levels to provide information, to be coming up without any sort of responsiveness, without any resources, the unfunded mandates that are causing our local governments, causing our schools, causing our state governments to be tied up in a knot. There's a better way to do this, and we can find those long-lasting solutions based on conservative principles, and that's what I'm running to bring. So I hope to earn your vote on August 4th in our Republican primary. And thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And with that, that concludes our 3rd congressional debate. Thank you on behalf of the Grand Rapids Chamber for tuning in, and to all the candidates, a virtual round of applause. We appreciate you joining us to help us get a better understanding of where you stand on the issues. Again, the election is just 2 weeks away. We only had an opportunity to touch on a few issues: the economy, healthcare, immigration reform, unemployment. the Chamber is touching a lot more issues on behalf of the business community: transportation, daycare, education, human resources, the environment. You can find out more about that at our website, grandrapids.org. And please join us for our upcoming advocacy engagement series, The Art and Science of Polling, which will be Monday, July 27th at 3:30. Again, you can find out more at grandrapids.org and more about the Chamber there as well, with resources to help your business. Again, thank you for tuning in to this third congressional debate, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.